Hi, I'm Becca with Flair Espresso, and today I'm going to show you how to dial in a new coffee you've never used before using the Flair 58 Plus. The coffee I'll be dialing in today is Sightglass's Owl's Howl Blend, which has some notes of cacao nib, stone fruit, and candied orange peel. And this is considered a medium roast. So I'm a big fan of keeping my dial-in process very simple and starting off with a recipe. So a recipe is 3 variables that we can manipulate in coffee to be able to reach a desired result. Those 3 variables are dose, which is the dry coffee in the basket, the yield, which is the liquid espresso in the cup, and then the last variable is the time that it takes to brew. So the dose I'm going to be using today is 18 grams of dry coffee in the basket. And in order to figure out my yield, I'm going to talk quickly about brew ratios. So a brew ratio essentially is for 1 gram of coffee, we're going to use a certain number of grams of water, and that's going to give us a coffee to water ratio. Now we know this is a medium roast coffee, so I'm going to start off with using a brew ratio of 1 to 2 or a 1 to 2.5 brew ratio. So that means 18 grams of dry coffee times, I'm going to say 2.2 ratio, and so I'm going to yield about 40 grams of liquid espresso. So if I keep those 2 variables constant, then what I can do in the end is manipulate my grind size, which has a direct correlation to the time that it takes to brew my shot. So before I begin the brewing process, I'm going to do a little pinch test for coffee. So I'm going to open up my bag of coffee. I'm going to throw a little bit down my grinder and grind on through, and the goal is to kind of see what the grind size is for this coffee at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and grind just a little handful of coffee right now. What I'm looking for is to hear either a gritty sound or no sound at all. So if I hear a gritty sound, that means that the coffee is likely too coarse. I don't hear a gritty sound actually, so I think I'm going to try and brew with this and see how it brews. So next, I'm just going to go ahead and dose out my 18 grams of coffee. Okay, I can take this coffee now and add it to my portafilter, and then I'm going to use my WDT tool or perhaps even a toothpick if you don't have one of these, and I'm just going to distribute my coffee bed. And the goal is to make sure that there's no pockets of air in between the coffee grounds and also that there are no big clumps. So our goal is to make sure that this is as even and distributed as possible. I like to settle on the table just a little bit, and now I'm going to go into tamp. The goal is to tamp with even and level pressure, so I'm just going to give it my body weight. Wipe the rim of the portafilter and the little ears. Place my puck screen on top. So for temperature of water, I have for this medium roast 205 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 96 degrees Celsius. For lighter roasts, I tend to stick around 200 to 205, same with medium roasts. And then for dark roasts, I tend to go closer to 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. So right now we're at 205 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to go ahead and begin my brewing process. So I'm going to fill my brew chamber all the way to the top here. And now for pressure. So I have a pressure gauge here, which I'm going to monitor as I go through my brewing process. I like to experiment with a standard baseline of 3 bars of pressure for about 7 seconds, and then I ramp up all the way to 7 to 8 bars of pressure for the remainder of my brew. And the reason for that is I like to keep a baseline for when I dial in a coffee like this. This is my go-to pressure. So I am getting very slow drips, which is indicating to me that my grind is a little bit too fine. So I'm going to try and brew through this as best as possible, but I'm definitely going to be changing the grind size to be a little bit more coarse. Okay, so I reached 40 grams in a minute and a half. So I know for a fact that my grind size is way too fine. That took way longer than it is supposed to. So a pretty easy fix. Now today I am grinding using the Royal hand grinder that is connected to the power tower. So I know that with this grinder, I probably will need to make a few numbers change on this grinder. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I remove my funnel here and I'm going to lift up my collar and I'm probably going to go like 6.5 on the Royal grinder, which I believe is 1 full turn and then to the 6. Okay, so for cleanup, I've purged any remaining water that has gone through my coffee bed. This makes cleanup a little bit easier, so now I can go ahead and remove my portafilter without a lot of mess. Knock out my coffee puck and clean my portafilter. So now what I'm going to do, I've made my grinder adjustment. I am going to redose my 18 grams, grind like I did before, but a different grind size, and see what result I get in my next brew. So this shot here was 18-gram dose with 40-gram yield in about 30 seconds, which I'm very happy with the way that recipe is looking right now. Taste-wise, it tastes very sweet, much better than my shot before, so I'm pretty pleased. So when you dial in a new coffee, it is best to choose a baseline recipe, pressure, and water temperature, and also consider your grind size and your brew ratios. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, reach out to Flair's customer service team.